Who's your fighter? Welcome back to Who's Your Fighter, a series where we talk about fighting game character lore and draw them. I'm Professor Crow, and today I'll be talking about the iconic green-haired succubus, Morrigan Aensland. Alright, let's start the lore. Morrigan Aensland was born in an unknown region of Scotland in the year 1678. The adopted daughter of Belial Aensland, the ruler of the demon realm known as Mackay, or the Dark Realm. When Belial first found Morrigan, he discovered that she had great power resting within her. A power he feared would be too much for her to control. So he took the opportunity to take a third of her soul and seal it away. This would be the origin of Lilith. That's a story for another time. Belial sealed another third of her soul within himself to keep until she was ready to wield her power. Belial had hoped that Morrigan would grow to rule and bring balance to Mackay, as it would be exposed to the crisis of perishing soon. And an heir with great power would not be born to the Aensland family for another 1,200 years. Morrigan would be the future of the Aensland family, and Mackay itself. Morrigan was classified as an S-class noble within the demon world. Being born at a time during an intense power struggle within Mackay, a succubus child was not seen as an acceptable ruler to the other nobles of the realm. Her time to rule would come when she would complete her soul, unbeknownst to her. Morrigan found her life in the Aensland castle dull, and would seek any opportunity to visit the human world and find any form of entertainment. Morrigan loved the lifestyle of humans, seeking parties and excitement in the nightlife of the modern day. Side note about the Aensland succubus, they don't really absorb the soul of the opposite sex like your general succubus do. Instead, they seek stimulation in order to secrete a liquid that keeps them alive. The best way to do this is for them to enter the dreams of others and take a liquid formed in the brain of those who dream, stealing the dream itself. Without this special liquid, a succubus would die after 2 days. One night, Morrigan senses a strange power coming from the human world, the power of a great being known as Pyron. She sets out for the human world to seek it. After she returns, she is informed of Belial's death. And with his death, a third of her soul he had taken returns to her, and she is named the ruler of Mackay. Despite being the ruler of Mackay, Morrigan would shirk her duties and return to her exciting carefree lifestyle of before. Resolve and sense of duty would be tested, as she would be challenged by evil forces such as the vampire Dimitri, seeking to take her spot as ruler of Mackay, and the demon Jeddah Doma, who seeks to merge the Dark Realm and the human world into one and rule over it. Jeddah would find the last missing third of Morrigan's soul and form it into the being Lilith. Jeddah would pull Morrigan's castle into the dimension he formed, and she would feel Lilith's presence. Morrigan would eventually find Lilith, her missing piece, and fuse together to make Morrigan whole and restoring her to full power. She would use her full power to defeat and destroy Jeddah, putting a stop to his evil and stopping the fusing of the human world in Mackay. Morrigan would always remain a carefree spirit and a seeker of excitement, but knows she is Mackay's ruler and will seek to defend it and the human world she loves from any force that would dare to take it from her. Now back to the generally unscripted part of this, where I talk about the drawing process, just my overall thoughts on the whole, artwork in general, and the idea I was going for, I guess. This was one of those rare cases where I nailed the pose right away. As you can see, I do start off with like a really chunky brush to get a general shape and feel for it. Nothing concrete, it's always messy. And then I go through with a more like line-based, like sketchier, more refined brush to kind of really pinpoint like more details. And this is a case where I did kind of 3 sketches. The big chunky one to get the feel, the second one to kind of pinpoint the details, and then the third one is to hammer out even more details and just get a feel for the overall like lighting, shape, and form, and what the final pose is going to end up being. I did at the beginning feel like I just really nailed the pose, which is a rare thing for me, and it was fun to kind of keep iterating on it and like refining it and fleshing it out. I'm really proud of that hand, by the way, that beckoning hand. Normally, like many artists, I struggle with hands, and so to nail that down on like the first try was you know, it felt good. And obviously you can tell just by the look of the overall art and whatnot, I was going for something reminiscent of the older Bengus style done for a lot of the promotional artwork for the original Darkstalkers back in the 90s, where everything had this more like bluish dark shade to it and these hatching lines, and Morrigan had these chunkier bangs that were like more flowy than what you see later on, where she has more of those like straight on, like just straight bang cuts. And I just always like this kind of split bang, like flowy look to Morrigan more. I feel like it really just emphasizes her silhouette a little more, I would say. And also I'm just a fan of like big 90s anime hair, and always try to implement it wherever I can. This was me kind of doing a bit of a color pass to try and figure out the overall tone and whatnot I was going to go for later on. And it was also just like a more of a refined sketch that I ended up like posting just to kind of show people, hey, this is what I'm working on. And this is where we go into the line work, where I was trying to be a little more refined than the previous Ryu drawing, where it was more of me just kind of figuring out what I want to do and just doing this more loose sketch thing. This one, there was more of a plan, and I had a clear idea of where I wanted to go and how I wanted to refine it. And so, yeah, this is the line process of that. There's not much to say here except that it was, interesting. It was definitely a slow process, but I got through it. Much like a lot of people, I do not like line work. It is my least favorite part of the drawing process. But you gotta do it, and I think I did a pretty decent job at it. To touch on this part real quick, this was a case where I had an idea for what I wanted to do with the hand, but I didn't quite refine it yet, as this was a drawing that of course took multiple days for me to do. So this was me coming back to it on another day, trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with this hand? And I just decided to kind of ball it up into a fist. And, you know, it ended up being not the most exciting thing to do with that hand, but it worked out in the end. I think it really adds to the silhouette, and it keeps sort of the direction and flow going, you know, because that was kind of what I wanted to focus on in this one specifically, is just the direction of like your eyes when you're looking at the drawing, and you know, that kind of classic art tip of like making things into an S shape and whatnot. And here we have, of course, the color process. This is me blocking out the colors to try and, you know, get to everything a little quicker. I know there are people out there who don't do this and just go in and just start coloring like crazy, but you know, I don't have that kind of refinement in my skill yet, so I just go for doing the color blocking out, and it really helps me out to come back to it when I need to do shading and whatnot. But yeah, and this is the whole coloring process. I was trying to go for like a halfway painterly / cell shaded look. Like I said, trying to emulate the style of like classic Capcom art from that 90s era in terms of the coloring process, and like adding these blue, almost purplish shades to like add a deeper contrast. Because I feel like when you think of Darkstalkers, you really do think of like this almost mysterious, ethereal, or like just darker overall tone. And in this case, I really was trying to push that more and more and more and more. And you'll see it later on how much I push those cooler, darker tones with some more like layer effects and whatnot. And one of my favorite things to do recently, I never used to be a big fan of coloring, but something I really like to do more recently is adding highlights to stuff where it really like, you know, pops out, like on the thighs and the leggings, for example, like how you can see the little bit of shine and whatnot. It really aids to add a bit of dimension to your art, to do things like that, because it really shows like the rounded sort of where the light is actually hitting it and whatnot. And it is a bit of a crux for me to do a bit of rim lighting on some aspects of the character and whatnot. The hair was something I was trying out that was new, where I was focusing less on trying to make like individual like strand shapes and stuff like that, and more on just shading big blocks of the hair itself, and only emphasizing little parts where I felt like it was necessary to add flow to it. And here you see me playing with layer effects to add a little bit of contrast and color to just test around and see like, okay, is this gonna work? Does this add to it? And here's me adding a bit of a red rim light to kind of break up the cooler colors. You saw a flash of a watermark there for a second. Here is the background process, which when I thought about the background for it, I'm not big on backgrounds. I'm very not good at them. But with this one, I had an idea for like this sort of bat background that would work out, and the red on the edge of Morrigan is meant to kind of break up that silhouette and help out, you know, not have her blend into the background too much. But yeah, and here's just the final touch of the additional lighting, and with it getting close to completion. Overall, I'm really happy with this piece of art, and I think I took it in a pretty interesting direction, and it definitely is some of the best work I've done in a long time, especially when it comes to just overall lighting and depth and line work, you know. And it really introduced me to a bunch of new processes that I think I'm going to use going forward. And I think from now on, you can expect to see a lot of the artworks for this series kind of have this level of quality to them, if not better, as I always seek to improve. But yeah, not much else left to say about this art process aside from it was fun, it was a learning experience, and I think I did a pretty good job. If you have an idea for any future characters you'd like to see me tackle, leave a suggestion in the comments below, and maybe you'll see that character pop up soon. Gotta do a lot of research on my end though, so it will take some time in between suggestions, but usually I announce ahead of time. Anyways, like always, make sure to like and subscribe, and look forward to the next video. Till then, I'll see you at the next lore session. Professor Crow, out.